People must have told you at that time, why you send your 15-year-old son to a store, what kind of parenting is this, etc., all of that, right?
Everyone said that. My me time, this is my party time, my life is defined. And you said that's how I like it. Completely going against
What I said I was.
what your beliefs were.
I can't imagine a time when I'd go to the doctor at this office at 9:30 a.m. and have time to just read the newspaper for half an hour.
All this ESOPs in a startup is just illusions. And people were putting money on shit like this. Because education just doesn't come by going to college. Education comes with...
So before we actually start this conversation, I wanted to talk about why I actually thought this was a good idea to do. We live in India where there's always sort of conflicts or conversation between startups and traditional businesses, the new economy versus the old economy. This is also something that actually happened a lot at my home. And so I thought, who better to bring into this conversation than my dad? My dad is someone I've grown up looking up to. He's an entrepreneur in himself and my hero as I was growing up, but also someone I disagree with a lot. While we share a very, very strong relationship of mutual respect and admiration, our views to a lot of things are not the same. And I think a lot of people have similar relationships or conversations with their fathers and their parents. And very few of these conversations have actually come out to the public. So I thought, who better to bring to this conversation than my dad? Introducing to you, although some of you may have seen him on Instagram, on Reels, my father, Vaidya, a founder and MD of the Rose Group of companies, a luxury and retail veteran for the last 35 plus years. A lot of people think that Dr. Vaidya's was my family business, but he was and is a first generation entrepreneur who went past 4 or 5 generations of Ayurveda legacy to start his own journey in the jewelry space and eventually built a company that is now one of the most well-renowned companies in the jewelry and watch space in India. So I'm excited to deep dive and delve into this conversation with my dad, Vaidya.
Thank you, Arjun, for this lovely introduction. And there are a lot of things you know about my son, Arjun, which you will have got with the way he has made a success out of a startup and created one of the largest digital Ayurveda businesses, and which was my father's legacy, actually, not mine, as he rightly put it. But let me introduce who Arjun is. So I'm going to take you back when I was... My son Arjun was about 5 years old, and I was going to Alibag with my father, and we generally had conversations and pretty much a similar relationship that Arjun has with me, I had with my dad. And I told him, while we were on the ferry going there, I said, Dad, I've not been sleeping a few nights. So he says, why, what's the stress? And he being a doctor, he says, are you okay health-wise? And I said, no, I'm worried about my sons. So he says, what? He says, I said, Dad, if my children do 10% of the crazy things that I've done while growing up, I would be really stressed out. How did you manage? And he laughed at me and he said one thing, and I'll come back to that. But what he said was, have faith in the upbringing you give your children. That's what I had. I had faith in you. And I was sure that you would do what it takes when the time came. And that's what I'm going to tell you about my son. If you see us, we are people from two completely different ends. He says we love each other and we respect each other and have mutual admiration. But I am the passionate, crazy, creative, aggressive kind of guy. And on the other side, I had a son who was more like a father to me, in the sense that he was very patient, very balanced, very sensible, and was always the calming factor in all my crazies. So that's how I always introduce my son.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And I think, just leading in from that, I don't get enough opportunities to ask you the tough questions, right? I think that I'm someone who doesn't like conflict so much. And so I skirt away from conflict. But through this conversation, I'm going to use this platform to really ask you all of the things that I thought about what you thought about what I was doing, and how you thought I was doing it as well, right? So the first question that I wanted to ask was, I think all of us entrepreneurs say, and we like to talk about wear this thing called failure as a badge on your sleeve and respect failure, and nothing comes from success, and failure is the only thing that teaches you, etc. And I had a very early failure as well when we started Dr. Vaidya's. We failed miserably offline. I had never failed like that in my life. I went to a good school. I was a good student in school. I went to our Ivy League college. I had a great job out of college in private equity, and then I had this massive failure, and it totally broke me down, like completely broke me down, right? So I remember at that time you saying, no, it's just view life as a video game and view business as a video game, and nothing comes from success. And had you got success in the first instance, you wouldn't have been able to deal with failure. So respect that you've got this failure now. But emotionally, it's totally breaking for a person, right? I remember coming to my room on that Friday evening, locking myself up, and pretty much almost not leaving till Monday morning because I couldn't take it. So from hindsight, it looks great to see this productive failure. But tell us about that moment of that failure.
So Arjun, our lives have been a little different in the sense that, yes, you had a lot of challenges, but you had me telling you make your weaknesses into your success and monitoring and seeing that you always had success, right? I came from a generation where your grandfather was so busy from morning to evening, and it was a generation where moms took care of the kids while they were growing up to a certain age, and dad was there for the holidays, for the great fun things and everything, and to be strict enough to tell you, no, you have to do better. Okay, with us, it was different. I told you, you'd learn from it. My dad's approach was a little different, but it was with his generation. And at that time, you had to build a lot of confidence in yourself, which both, to be fair, both my parents did give us. But everything that I did, because I didn't have that thing of making your weaknesses into your success from parenting. So everything that I did, I used to fail. So since I was a child, whether it was playing cricket, whether it was playing football, whether it was studies, whether it was anything, besides having to work hard, I always failed. So I was a little used to failure. Okay, so failure really didn't deter me. And with you, to a certain extent, I don't know whether it's right and wrong in parenting, but when you were younger, always was the safety net. We used to watch out, no, this is happening, prepare you for it, and so that it builds your confidence. Because of what I went through in life, that's how I addressed it. Maybe you'll address it different with your daughter. But this part where failure was every day. So when you grew up and you failed, it just made you, okay, chalo, let's wake up tomorrow morning, it'll be fine. But with you, who've always been an achiever, it was harder. So even today when you see kids who are average in your school, in everything, and they go out in life, they probably will also make great successes because of one reason. They're used to failure. It doesn't impact them the way it would impact a guy who's always been right up there.
So what do you tell me, 18-year-old me going to Ivy League college, or 21-and-a-half-year-old me coming back from Brown University with a 4.0, having done well in life all through? It's 10 years later now that I've been in India, right? And I have a problem dealing with failure. Even a small failure, like for example, one of my LinkedIn posts not doing well, or one founder taking an investment from another investor other than me, or my WhatsApp not working for 7-9 days. I can't deal with those failures.
Yeah, but Arjun, that is something I have been watching, and I've been seeing you go through these small hurdles that you face. As a parent, the first thing you want to do is reach out and say, come, I'll sort it out for you. And as time is going, you don't see it. But I have seen from your first failure of your first year in Dr. Vaidya's and to the failures that you face now, time and these more and more of these coming in your way have made you slowly mature on how to handle that failure. I mean, while talking about this, it reminds me of one time when I had one of my biggest shocks and hits in life, when there was a government income tax raid at our place, and I had really not done anything wrong, but it was such a big shock and setback for me that I was shaken up. What really got me strong was the letter from you. The letter from you, which I often read when I get a setback. And that letter tells exactly what I'm telling you now back. That, this is just a little bump in the road. You've always been a fighter. You've always been successful. And when you look back, hindsight, you will realize and smile and say, it helped you get better. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's what you said.
So I was actually in between one point, right? And that is in father-son relationship. And I remembered through my times at Dr. Vaidya's, we'd come for a monthly meeting to your office and we'd have this conversation, we'd show you the numbers, we thought we'd come very well prepared and then we weren't prepared and we'd feel bad, etc., all of that. And, a lot of the things that you said actually made sense. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, it makes sense when I think later. When I sit at night after that conversation, I think. But the first reaction is fight, defend, be aggressive, disagree, right? And it always happens. Sometimes I may hear the same thing from a parent as I hear from somebody else. When the other person says it sounds right. When my parent says it sounds wrong. Now, I am just a dad for the last 6 months. But you've had this relationship with your dad and then you've seen it with us as well. How does a parent react to this?
Well, honestly, what you are saying is for the betterment of your child. And you go with the thought that at some point he will understand it. But that's the safety net you are giving. So don't stop. I will never stop bringing out the issues.
Easier thing is not to say.
But then that's not... If I didn't care for you, that would be the perfect thing for me to do. But I don't care. But it's because you care. Because he's your son. Or she's your daughter. You will care, and doesn't matter what you have to face. Fights, unhappiness, whatever it takes, shouting, sometimes to a point where you feel you're being disrespected, but you're not. It's your child just defending and taking out his or her frustration. And you know it. And you react, and you know that more than you, I'm far more reactive in every situation. And maybe I overreacted also. But that was because I want to save a situation for my son. Now, Arjun, there was one thing that I always wanted to talk to you about. If you remember your first internship that I got you, you were in school and you were in your summer break. And I made you take a job as a sales intern in our Watches and More store. When I put you there, there were certain things that I put you there for you to learn. It wasn't about business, it was about life. And you had come back to me with some challenges. I don't know whether you remember them.
Yeah.
I want you to talk, because that was your first experience in the world of business. And I want you to talk about that part of your journey.
So let's first talk about why I was put into that store, right? So we had gone for a family vacation to the US and Canada. This was after my 10th grade. I had lost weight for the first time in my life. I had liked this girl for 3 years, and she agreed to be my girlfriend. So it was my first girlfriend. That time, outgoing from the US was some $150 a minute, and incoming calls into the US for an Indian number, $110 a minute. I had raked up a phone bill of 35,000 rupees at age 15. And I remember when I saw that phone bill, I was like, I'm done. Like, it's over for me. And I remember having that conversation where obviously mom was shocked and she didn't know what to say because I was 15 years old, 15 and a half years old. I got a phone bill of 35,000 rupees, and 35,000 rupees in 2007 probably means like 2 lakh rupees, 2.5 lakh rupees now. And then I remember you saying, okay, this is a pretty crazy bill. I can't tell you anything about not to have done because it's done. And you have to pay the bill now. So that's all. We'll move on from that. We're going to earn this money and go and earn this money. And that's why I was in that store after getting 95.7% in my ICSC and getting a summer off 3 months before I moved to an IB school. So I went to this store, and this store was in Phoenix Mills in Bombay, which was one of the most, if not one of the only premium malls in South Bombay at that time.
That's correct.
And basically that's where we used to hang out. All my friends and all would come there. We were free. We had just finished 10th grade. So everybody was free, right? And so when I went to that store to work, actually it was pretty weird for me because that's where I was hanging out the whole time. And that store was very well located in a place right next to Subway where everyone used to go. And so I ended up interacting with a lot of my friends and meeting a lot of my friends at that time. At that time, some of my friends from this sort of high-end, posh South Bombay school would hang out in the mall, and they came to the store and they started laughing and making fun. And they came into the store as well. And they started asking me the price of watches, and naive that I was, I started showing them the watches and giving them the price, and obviously they didn't want to buy anything. They just wanted to make it a point to make fun of me that I was working, right? And they were looking down upon the fact that I was working.
Condescending towards
Condescending. And I came back home and I recounted this incident.
You came and spoke to me about it.
There was one big learning from there that you had said, and that stuck with me for the rest of my life. Take no shame in doing work, whatever kind of work it is. And I heard this conversation multiple times later where you said, whatever you're doing, whether it's selling sing chana on the street as well, do it with 110% and be the best at doing it. And so from that day, through my entrepreneurial life as well, I had no shame in calling customers. I had no shame in selling my 150, 200, 500 rupee product myself. I had no shame in COVID in unloading the tempo and packing the orders myself. And I had no shame at all in cleaning my office. Because in COVID, we had nobody to come and clean the office and do all of that work. And so that big learning of, and Mahatma Gandhi said this as well, right? Take no shame in work, and there is no menial work, even if it's cleaning a bathroom. The second thing that I learned through that experience was that I was the boss's son. And because I was the boss's son, nobody took me seriously. Good and bad. Good because they were like, hey, we won't let him do the hard work. And bad because they're like, anyways, this guy's not come to work, he's just come because his dad has sent him. And I think that was totally making the experience worthless, right? So I remember thinking, what do I need to do here? Because basically I'm standing in this store wearing this t-shirt. They're not letting me speak to any customers. They're not letting me do any work. I'm not able to clean the store. I'm not able to move the merchandise. I'm just standing there basically. And then when I'm standing there the whole day, I'm wasting my time, right? So I think breaking that barrier between me and that team was very important. And I remember having this conversation about small things, right? Like eating lunch with them, taking food from my home for them as well, understanding about their background, their lives, their challenges, their nuances, making them honest with me about what's wrong and right in the company as well. That helped me break the barrier with them, build a relationship with them, and then years later I actually played on the same cricket team as them as well, right? And I think that allowed me to gain what I needed to gain from that experience, what it was like to work in a store, what it was like to do retail in India, what the Indian customer does, how the Indian customer reacts, and what's relevant for the Indian customer. So I think these two things were sort of big things for me through that experience. I think that experience overall taught me what hard work was. Because I may consider myself fit, I may consider myself healthy, I may consider myself all of those things, but standing in a store for 10 hours is the most tiring thing you can do in life. Standing for 10 hours, even if you're doing nothing, there are no customers, just standing there and keeping your mind active for those 10 hours doing something, very, 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 very challenging. And I think that taught me a lot, and I'm so glad that I got the experience to business early. Like a lot of people say that, because you come from a household of business runs in your blood, runs in your veins, the conversation on the dinner table, on the lunch table are about business, etc., all of that. All of that was great, and I learned a lot from that. But the biggest learning about real business for me was standing in that store. Seeing a sale event happen, seeing lots of people come into the store, running a buy one get one free offer, seeing how to get people into that store as compared to your competitors. There is another store down the hall which is selling similar products. How do you win versus them? Micro market competition. I think all of those things were amazing learning experience at that age of 15.
I mean, I remember it also when you came to me and said, this is there. And I told you, they will always see you as the boss's son unless you become one of them. And the starting point is, I told you, is like you give me an example of how to do it. And of course, sitting with them, eating with them was one part of it. But I also told you, in which you did wonderfully, is I said, go early and start cleaning up the store, setting up the display. And I said, you had enough exposure overseas that you know how display is done. And also assisting them while they are doing the sale. These things clearly showed that very famous Indian line.
People must have told you at that time, why you send your 15-year-old son to a store, what kind of parenting is this, etc., all of that, right?
Everyone said that to me, but it never bothered me. Because बाप बन के कुछ नहीं सीखते, बेटा बनेगा तो सीखेगा. And the same team, once you started assisting them, started teaching you the nuances that they face, the sales. And I remember year on year, what happened is emotionally you felt ownership. So every year when you came back from university and you were in Phoenix, you would go and visit them. And that was a defining moment. You would go and check the display. You were doing everything an entrepreneur did. Checking the display. Why is this not right? Why is there more stock? Why is this not put correctly? You were asking questions as if you felt the ownership to the store, which was fine, but also you became the entrepreneur that you are today. So that little internship brought a big change.
Absolutely.
And your foundation of where you are. Coming back to the business side, that's where you were. And I remember you had a very defined life as a job. And when I used to talk to you as an entrepreneur, that you need to do this, you need to do that, you said, look, I have my defined life. This is my workspace. This is my me time. This is my party time. My life is defined. And you said, that's how I like it. This is the new age. This is how it works. And I remember you telling me all this. And when you started, straight from there, instead of going for your MBA, which you had got into, you decided to take your grandfather's legacy ahead and become an entrepreneur. And of course, we were happy to let you do whatever you wanted. There was a complete change of your thought process as when you were in a career as a professional, and how you believed that you needed your time and you didn't need to be like me, working crazy hours, crazy times, crazy days of the week. You found that all absolutely, in your terms, ludicrous. So leaving that and then leaving that defined life and becoming an entrepreneur and realizing that you are completely going against
what I said I was.
What your beliefs were.
Yeah, I think my beliefs are fluid now. Like at that time, I had maybe strong beliefs, I had strong thought process, etc. All of that, and I would say, "This is how I am. This is how I want to be," etc. All of that. After you become an entrepreneur, you get proven wrong so many times that you're like, "Okay, boss, whatever you say, maybe you're right, maybe I'm wrong." I remember having a very structured life. I was young. I used to party. I used to have a good time on the weekends. I would go into the office. I remember this very clearly. I would go into the office at 9:30 a.m. and I'd read the newspaper. I can't imagine a time when I'd go to the doctor at this office at 9:30 a.m. and have time to just read the newspaper for half an hour, right? And see what's happening in the world. I think eventually I went into this mode that every entrepreneur goes about things keep breaking and you got to keep firefighting and fixing things, and that was life. Initially it was a shock. It was a shock because structure was completely removed from my life. I remember in the early days you asked me, how are you sleeping? And I think the first 2 weeks I was sleeping fine, right? Because there was nothing. I had a small cabin in your office. I had no team. I was alone. Just me and my laptop trying to figure things out. And that was shocking. Just me and my laptop trying to build a business. At that time I also remember I had put a LinkedIn page for my company and put a description of my company. I didn't have a website. I need to hire people. So I went to this recruiter that I got referred to. And I said, hey, by the way, this is my LinkedIn page. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to hire people. They're like, where's your website? And they don't have a website yet. It's getting built. They were like, okay, thank you. We cannot hire for you. I said, no, I'm giving you business. I'm going to build a good business. I'm giving you commission to hire. They were like, if you don't have a website, we can't hire for you. In that circumstance, a private equity analyst whose business card allows them to meet anybody in the country, any consumer entrepreneur in the country that I wanted to meet doing even 1,000 crores was okay to meet me with my card. And then going to this complete sort of non-structured life where I had nobody wanted to talk to me, nobody cared what I was doing, nobody was interested in what I was doing. I remember that time I still can't grow facial hair, I can't grow a beard. And so at that time I would go to these meetings like completely clean shaven 23, 24-year-old guy and nobody would take me seriously. So I would actually not shave and get whatever little bit of facial hair to make myself look a little bit older than I was for people to take me seriously. I think eventually life became as any entrepreneur's life becomes, and as a VC today, while my life should be a little bit more structured, I still live like an entrepreneur. I have no barrier in terms of work hours, meetings. I did a meeting in Ahmedabad day before yesterday. I landed at 11 p.m. I met an entrepreneur from 11:30 p.m. to 1 a.m. in his office. I think that's what entrepreneurship does to you. It gives you a lot of stamina. It gives you the ability to work longer hours. It gives you mental stamina as well. Like I remember when we closed the investment with RPSG, we closed the investment over 3 days and 40 hours. We worked 40 hours over a weekend. The last day, we started work in the afternoon at 12. We ended work the next morning at 5. I was in someone's office for some 16 hours working on the same thing. But we were able to get it done. And that's something that only entrepreneurship can give you. Nothing else can give you in life. When I saw it as a profession, I thought entrepreneurs were crazy. Maybe they didn't understand work-life balance. But when I see it now as an entrepreneur who's been through the entrepreneurial journey, it's a work-life merger. And so on a holiday in Sri Lanka that I got gifted as a wedding gift from one of our family friends in Sri Lanka that I got to, the first 7 hours of that trip was spent on rejigging the server because our website crashed. And I stopped feeling bad about these things. Because there could also be moments in the office where I got to spend time with my wife that was not just work, it was personal. And so I think that's a skill I learned through my time as an entrepreneur.
But one of the things that I wanted to add here is, in my business, what I did is I didn't just make myself an entrepreneur. I made my whole team believe they are entrepreneurs and believe in the ownership of the business. And that doesn't come with shareholding. It comes with a mindset. So that's the way the traditional business
But why should it not come with shareholding? Like in our world today, we give ESOPs, we give all of these things, we make people feel like they're owners of the company when they're genuinely owners of the company, right? We just had last week Flipkart do an ESOP buyback of $700 million. That means people who worked in Flipkart made 7,000 crores in value.
So I believe in reality. Okay, and it's not that I don't want to give shareholding. In a way I do, because I incentivize them to an extent that it counts for salary. All this ESOPs in a startup is just illusions. Because out of 100 ESOPs, how many really are you able to encash?
Notional value.
It's notional value. But in the real world, people need real money to bring food on the table, to give their lifestyle, to improve their standard of living. So don't give them notional things. This notional thing works in all this yuppie culture of coming from abroad, studying, starting up things, taking money in from other people who think similarly, and actually not knowing. Your startup was a startup in the frame of word, but in reality, it was a real business.
So in 2021 and 2022, after I exited, there was a crazy time that happened in the Indian startup ecosystem, right? Everything that had the word tech associated with it was exciting. Everything that had the word non-tech associated was not exciting. I remember doing a LinkedIn post where I said, I buy everything online. Who buys anything offline? Is offline even relevant, right? And mid 2022, we all got proven wrong. Traditional businesses became more... So traditional business came back, offline retail came back, and the startup space is going through what we call now a funding winter or a rationalization or a correction or all of these things. And I now find myself calling you to ask you about investments because I'm now investing also in startups that look like traditional world businesses. We had a call last week about an offline box healthcare model for clinics. We are now talking, I'm actually, for the first time in my life, asking you questions about jewelry because I'm looking at jewelry assets. So it seems like the world is now moving to more rationalization and reality. But as someone in 21 and 22 who didn't understand crypto, Web3, blockchain, metaverse, creator economy, all these big buzzwords that we were throwing around, I was throwing around them as well. I remember I said, look, we have this large family portfolio of investments and we have zero exposure to crypto. Can I put $10,000 in crypto at least? And I remember that conversation very clearly. I'm glad I didn't do it because he said, do you understand crypto? Do you understand this Bitcoin thing? And I genuinely said, I don't. I don't know it, but I'm just feeling FOMO that everybody's making so much money off it and so I should be a part of it. And you said, you have invested in some 50, 60 startups at that time. All may go to zero. But at least you have a thought process behind what you are investing in. You have a thesis. You know the founder, you have spent time. And so, you're gambling, but you're not doing black or red, right? You're playing poker. You're playing a game of skill. You may lose in the game of skill, and everybody loses in the game of skill. But at least you're playing a game of skill rather than black or red or something like that, right? But in 21 and 22, what did you feel? When everyone was like, hey boss, you're totally out of tech and this is not relevant and come on, you don't even have any metaverse angle to your traditional jewelry business and e-commerce nahi kar rahe ho.
So, coming back to where I was completing my point and I was talking about giving real as compared to notional. So, the real part is that people understand that in people who've done with experience and with work experience, they understand what real money is and what it takes to bring home food to the table, better life to the family, etc. The people who are in the startup world, I remember I've met so many of your friends. Someone saying, I don't care if I don't get a good salary, but I need to get an ESOP. And that company is just starting, and that ESOP is just a valuation. Where is it actually cashable? No, it isn't. It's just a valuation. Or I remember one founder friend of yours decided that she wants to pivot her business from one thing to another, and then she hires another friend to become CEO. A CEO of a company where you have only had 3 years experience. And then you're given an ESOP. How encashable is that? So the real world has real things. Startups also have real things. But then you have to know when is the ESOP valuable. Not when you're coming in, but if you give an ESOP to people when you're just about to IPO or just about to sell out, that may make sense.
I was saying on ESOPs, if you say that you should give an ESOP when it's real, and Flipkart gave an ESOP just before they got sold to Walmart, their team would have made 2x of the value of the ESOP because the value of the company was so high. The only reason the ESOP has been so valuable to the team is because it was given at seed stage or when they entered the company at that valuation and that value creation happened. So while a lot of startups fail, and 95, 97, 99, whatever that number is, 90% of startups fail, for people in that world, there is the chance of this unimaginable outcome. And that's what we all do it for. We all work for, live for. Our family's 3 crore rupee investment made some 30, 40 times return in a 5-year period. Had we not made that investment that time, we made the investment just before we sold the company. The value creation is very limited, right?
Okay, so let's get back to first answering the question of our business. Our business was real. It wasn't meant or built for selling. That was the final outcome. That's a different story. But the idea was to build the business. What happens in today's world of startups? People are building businesses to sell. So the real focus of why the business is very different. The dream about building Dr. Vaidya's was, I am in America, I am studying, yoga is taken from India and made into a $34 billion business and is no longer Indian, it's now American. Right? You come back and you come to me and tell me, I want to take our family, my grandfather's legacy and my forefathers before that and make Ayurveda proudly Indian and a business. So the concept of are we a startup, are we looking at creating a valuation Or are we a startup trying to create a business?
But any startup that's looking to just create a valuation or exit will fundamentally fail, right? Because if you get into it saying, I want to build this business to sell, that's a great thought to have. We never had that thought. But let's say you build a business to sell, you do everything to sell the business, you're in it to sell the business, and 3-5 years later you can't sell the business. Everybody knows you want to sell the business is built to sell and nobody's buying it.
And that's what's happening to most of the people, right? That's what's happening. So if I'm trying to differentiate what you've done from the world. Today the startup business is, oh, I see that, let's say this mic is there. Between this mic and where it's going to be, there is a possibility that they may need an extension wire or a Bluetooth. Now I create a business specific to that and say, I'm unique, I'm different in the audio and sound space, and that's where I want to go. And I'll get a valuation, and I'll do this, and I'll do that. And people were putting money on shit like this. Today, when you land up seeing in every part of the startup business, FMCG for that matter, you have so many startups.
And you have made investments in one FMCG startup.
But we saw it as a real business. One, that business did not exist. That business actually is got a thought process behind it. The thought process that where we put the money is that today everyone goes to the bars in India and they have their drink, and the bartender can only get the price because everyone knows the price of the alcohol. But when you make a cocktail, the price can be 2-3 times that, and you are giving value addition. So you are creating your B2B business by the bar owner wanting you to sell more cocktails than a drink. So you've done that, and the idea is they're not creating it to sell the business. They're creating a business.
Are there enough people there doing that now?
There always will be. So there in Ayurveda, right? Then your product, then your infrastructure. But the first is the thought process, the seed of a business.
You meet a lot of young people who come to want to work with you, right?
Yeah.
And you interview a lot of young people,
Yes,
etc. All of that. You have run a business for 35, 40 years now. For a lot of people in today's day and age and generation, that would be unthinkable. Doing something for 35, 40 years, let alone being in a job, etc. All of that. Right? I guess I come from a generation slightly before that, where I worked in only one place. I then built a company. Now I'm working in one place. It's been almost 2 years now. I have a problem today with the fickleness and the want to keep changing things. You probably have a bigger problem with that.
I do.
How do you deal with it?
So when I'm interviewing and I see a CV having 6 months, 9 months, 10 months, and every time it...
But 1 year is considered long today.
Yeah, so fair. So I ask you a question. Why so many shifts? And from the answers you can tell, because the first thing that when I get an answer from somebody is that, oh, this company was wrong because of this was wrong because of this was a political company and this was this. You hear thousands of things. But you know what? The person is never wrong. When I meet somebody like that, I know for a fact that this is not worth getting into or hiring because he can never be wrong. He's so caught up in this whole image of himself that it's all about me. And if you have to build a company, it has to be about us. It has to be about the company, not me.
And similarly with this younger crop of people, and I now consider myself largely in this group of people, a lot of people don't want to join their family business, don't want to join their traditional business. When they join, they're like, oh, there is a difference between that generation and this generation. I cannot do my own thing. I cannot find my own space. I need to make the business more new age. It's very old school. And for India to go forward, there will have to be the next generation of leaders take on their family businesses, find their own space in their family business, but be able to do it. It is very challenging. It's not easy for two generations to work together. There is much more of a generation gap between our generation and will be between me and Aisha than there was between you and your dad. How do you deal with this? Like, how do you think about this?
See, the issue is not generation gaps existed between me and my father too. And him and his father too. My father used to always tell me that the way my grandfather brought him up, he's going to be different. He's going to be my friend. But it's never the same. You know, it
But
cannot
when
be.
you started work,
Yes.
there was maybe not even a computer. When my
No, there was.
there was, but it was
It's just the 2 plus 2 to 4.
correct, right? And then there was a smaller computer. Then there was a desktop. Then there was a mobile phone. Then there was a Palm Pilot. Then there was a smartphone. There were laptops. There was all of this thing, right? So in between that, there were like 8, 10 different kinds of devices, and business changed completely. So generation gap is much smaller now.
So, no, I mean, today from the time of where we are used to iPads and notebooks and which we've changed to, it's keeping on changing every day. Now there are apps for everything. I'm not used to that. There is a generation gap. Now coming back to this generation gap that you were talking about, my mind goes off on another thought because you cut me and I can't hold on to thoughts like you. I want to get back to this point of when you were talking about people and hiring and what is the real business. And to put in this point where today's new business is, let's call it my son's business, and my kind of business is a daddy business. So when you talk about daddy businesses, brick and mortar businesses, the people that you hire, okay, they come with all these preconceived thoughts of what's cool and how it should be. And nobody wants to really roll up the sleeves and get themselves dirty. And when they start believing in it, you've seen whether it's the new age business like what you were running or a business which is 42 years old like I am running, the principle is the same. The generation gap is always going to remain. The only thing is that both generations have to get proactive. One is the generation that's going out has to have the openness to let go and the openness to accept that not everything the next generation is going to do is correct and they will make their mistakes. And the new generation coming in to family businesses that you are talking has to come in with the fact that I'm coming into this business. It has been run successfully for so many years. So let me first understand the situation. Let me learn how they run it, and then I can improve on it. You're not giving a person a chance to show you how it's run. You say, okay, I want to change it. You're selling jewelry in a store, I want to change it and put it into the net. Yes, but learn how it's sold in a store, and then how you'll improve it to omni. Today's younger generation don't come with a preconceived notion. I'm better educated, better exposed, therefore I have better experience. You don't. Because education just doesn't come by going to college. Education comes with the number of years you put in. Exposure also comes. It doesn't come because you started going abroad at the age of 5 and I at the age of 15 doesn't mean a shit. I can get equally exposed. Or probably am more. And more. In the same way, education, experience definitely I've got more. So maybe we've done it in a certain way and we are in uncharted territories with the new age. So taking this combination has to work. So it is both who have to put in the effort. I'm not saying my generation doesn't need to. We have to let go. But the confidence has to come to let go if the next generation shows the openness to learn and graduate into the game.
So I think that's a very interesting and apt place to end this part of the conversation, or this sort of first episode to the conversation. I think what it tells you and what it shows you is all of these conversations are happening in our own homes. We are having these conversations with our fathers, with our parents. And in a lot of circumstances and times, these conversations leads to fights, arguments. For me as well, it has led to this. But through this conversation, which was largely civilized, you saw that actually there is learning on both sides. It takes two hands to clap. And so I think the respect, admiration and support needs to be in both ways. As children, as the newer generation, we need to respect that there is a reason that things have been done in this manner for so many years. And there's a reason the things have worked in this manner for so many years. And so we need to give that respect to that conversation, to that learning, and to that experience. For me, I think while I did things my own way, I had a lot of respect to the experience that came from the generation above. As my dad used to say, respect my white hair and the learnings that have come with that white hair. And as the older generation, as parents, I think we need to see much more open-mindedness. We need to see the ability to learn both ways. We need to see the ability, like my dad had, to be able to embrace the digital medium and say, I don't understand Instagram Reels, but I want to be on Instagram Reels, and you will teach me how to do it. And that's okay. I'm fine that I don't know it, I'm fine that I'm in uncharted territories, and I'm fine to learn. Because at the end of the day, only if both generations work together, only if traditional business and the new economy comes together, can we take this country forward. And so, for all of you who are facing similar situations, I hope that this conversation added value. I hope that you have seen similar situations in your lives and you know how to deal with those situations. So, thank you for listening to the conversation. How did you enjoy it?
I really enjoyed it. I'm really glad that we had this heart-to-heart, because I have not had this kind of a heart-to-heart with you since you went to university. And secondly, is I've never got so much time with you since you went to university.
But I think there's a way to ask tough questions as well. Like, I asked you a lot of tough questions. I asked you a lot of things that I felt about the way you do your business. But there's a way to ask them.
I think that's a big learning. I mean, the way you put it to me and the openness with which you heard it, I don't find that in the younger generation right now. Forget my business. Even for startups, if you want to do a startup like what you did, people miss out on this part. They see you and as a successful startup and how you built it, but they forget, besides the hard work, the effort that you put in, the amount of time you spent learning from experiences of seniors and adults, not just me, but from senior management at Rose. You reached out to them, understood things, and so the success in a nutshell is that you got superb education, superb exposure, and you make sure of all the experiences that you can get from around. And that really counted for you. I see you doing that today. In so many times you get back to me and you ask me, and then take the experience, even if you know you're right. So I thank you for this. Love to do more things like this with you.
Thank you.